This video recording is for sports coaching and is for the task of skills of a sports coach. Throughout this video recording and the following lecture, we'll show progress on this task through the following. We should be able to describe the skills of sports coaches in your own words and using references where appropriate. It's important for you to be able to explain the skills of sports coaches in your own words, relating to a variety of different sports coaches. Further, it's important that we should be able to compare and contrast or provide similarities and differences of different sports coaches applying and using particular skills. There are 6 skills of a sports coach which we'll cover throughout this video tutorial, and they are listed here in the center of the page. Again, throughout this video, keep relating to the different images of particular sports coaches, and also try and use your initiative and thought to map the different skills to various sports coaches of your choice. The first skill of a sports coach that we'll look at is communication. Now this is twofold, comes in the form of verbal and non-verbal communication. Verbal communication can be considered as a two-way interaction which comes from the coach to either another coach or the player or players, and can also be towards the coach, so would certainly involve listening, not just giving of information. The second form of communication is non-verbal, and that could be 3 forms. It could purely be body language, for example a smile or arms folded, which might be quite negative. It could be hand signals, which might be of benefit to communicate when possibly a player and a coach are of a particular distance, maybe in a training session or a match, which is something possibly Dave Rush might use to indicate that he's happy with the player's performance or a particular aspect of their performance. And the third is dynamic demonstrations, and this is probably more what we could relate to within the coaching session. Particularly here we've got Becky Hammond with a basketball. She might be carrying out a dynamic demonstration of a particular activity or drill for the players. Our second skill is problem solving. This could be in a number of ways depending on the coach and the sport. Various coaches have different problems that they must solve. Some may be match-related issues, for example a player getting sent off. It could be purely making substitutions related to the state of the game and what's happening and the result at the time. We could have conflicts between teammates. That has happened in the past, where coaches need to be aware of and problem solve and, if you like, manage their individuals. It might be something which is an injury or illness, which is long-term, which might affect either the individual athlete or the players or the team's overall performance and dynamics. We could have things such as scheduling problems. Facilities might be double booked, and we've got to be aware of that, or we might have a tight space to manage where we would prefer to be coaching in a much bigger area. We might relate that to our practical coaching sessions. We may only have half of a sports hall where the space might be very tight, and we've got to be aware of how we can still get things carried out effectively and almost solve the problem. It might be something to do with the equipment and kit. We might not have enough of what we require for all of our athletes or players. Analysing is our third skill of a sports coach. This is typically something which takes place within the coaching session itself. Analysing means that we need to have some sort of an impact from what the coach is requiring to do and get across. So we've got 3 different steps which we can logically follow. The participant would typically perform a skill of which the coach would observe the participant's performance, and with that observation the coach would then act on that and give feedback to the participant. This could be as a result of the decisions made against the technical model, so identifying technical points which the participant could improve on, or even give feedback on what they have done well. And this is particularly where the analysis is evident, when the feedback comes into place, not just the observation. From here, the participant can put the corrective feedback into practice, and the coach will continue to observe, which may result in further praise or feedback, which is where the analysis is still being applied. It might be here that Stuart Lancaster is observing his team, but he wouldn't actually be analysing unless he gives an input to try and affect the player or the team's performance. This may be where Tracy Neville is actually carrying out her feedback to the players as a result of analysing a period of a match when there's a timeout. So analysis can take place in the actual matches or the games of sports, depending on the opportunity to give feedback to the players. So sports where timeouts are evident, like basketball and netball, are particularly effective in this manner. The fourth skill of a sports coach is time management. This can be in coaching sessions, or it can be related to games, depending on how you'd like to get your example and explanation across relating to the coach. Here we might see Alberto Salazar managing the time within a coaching session, and particularly monitoring the performance of his athlete through time management. We've got an image of a coaching session plan here, where we've got to be aware of time management within our sessions. Typically, players like to have a game or a performance aspect towards the end of a session, so it's important not to have the previous, if you will, like sections of a coaching session taking too long. Things like the warm-up need to be appropriately managed, not elongated over a certain period of time. Skill development sections and progression sections need to be effectively time managed, so we can always build up what we've got in a coaching session to that competitive environment where we can again go back to the analysis and check that our players can perform in a competitive situation. We might see here Roy Hodgson almost managing time within the game. Is it the right time to bring on a substitution, or is a tactical formation change required? And that might be relative to the stage in the game, how long's left, and the current scoreline at the time. The fifth skill for a sports coach is organisation. It's important for coaches to be prepared for their coaching sessions, and that would be in having a session plan, but also related to what we can see here, the use of equipment. It looks like it's a bit of a mess on this image here in the left hand corner. So the use of equipment, we need to be organised, which relates to health and safety, not having equipment lying about, but also being prepared by knowing the correct number of equipment that we need, and that we've actually got that correct number of equipment. Otherwise we might have to make an organisational or a problem solving change if we haven't got enough equipment, and that check before the coaching session would allow us to problem solve immediately if we need to, and that is through good organisation. So one skill can affect another. We can also have organisation in relation to match schedules. It's often that coaches, particularly of younger teams, might give match schedules to the parents of youth team players, so they are well prepared in terms of when the fixtures are, where they are, where the meeting points are, etc. And also elite level coaches might have organisation through their team meetings and have a schedule for the day or for the week, so the players are aware of that and the team can be productive within the time that they are together. Evaluating is the sixth skill of a sports coach. Coaches are required to evaluate both their own performance and the performance of a team, and particularly for this point we're looking at both aspects. It might be personal reflection and self-evaluation, which would take place over a number of 4, 5, possibly 6 to 8 weeks. So a short to medium term period where we're evaluating our own performance as a coach. Have we been effective? But particularly in terms of evaluating, we can look at how the team have performed, or how the individual or the athletes performed. Now this is not necessarily something that we will have to carry out each week, although we may reflect on both ourselves and the team or athletes' performance. Evaluating is something which is over a period of time, and this is where the difference between analysis and evaluation comes into play. Analysis would be within the event or within the action. Evaluating would be post the action, so afterwards, evaluating over a period of time, having a look at possibly a certain phase in the season, what we might be looking at in this image, and moving into the next phase, how could we make improvements on what we have done in the previous phase. And this is where coaches often set targets and segment seasons and training plans in order to evaluate and look at the bigger picture. So as we're having a look at the various skills of a sports coach, it's not just the skills that we need to be aware of to be able to describe. In explaining, we need to start relating these skills to certain coaches, and that might come within their particular sport and even their role or hierarchy within the coaching environment, if you like. So a head coach like David Rush, Jose Mourinho, they may very well evaluate over a period of time. So what is it specifically that they do as a coach which alludes them to evaluating? Can you give some sporting and individual coach specific reasons which might explain that? For the distinction aspect and really comparing and contrasting, if Jose Mourinho and David Rush both do evaluate, how can we identify how they do that in a different way? Is it over different time periods? David Rush might evaluate after every 4 weeks. Jose Mourinho might evaluate over a 6 to 8 game period, which might be 2 games a week. It might be that is over 7 or 8 weeks itself. So they have a difference in how frequently they evaluate. Is it how they evaluate? Do they use statistics in a certain way? Does one coach, possibly Jose Mourinho, have access to statistics more than David Rush does? So he can't use statistics of his players' performances to evaluate. Does one coach evaluate themselves more than the others? So those are just examples of how you could possibly compare and contrast two coaches within one sport. And it's often useful to relate to the facilities and resources which the coaches have, possibly the level, international, club, and development, as well as the sports. So we're not just identifying the differences in a team sport and an individual sport as the differences for contrasting. It's important for you to spend a little bit of time and reflect on what you're able to do. Can you describe the different roles? Can you align them with coaches and give those specific explanations to give detail for the skills and the coaches? And can you compare and contrast? Here's the opportunity for you to summarize and identify different coaches who have those particular skills and look at those similarities and differences. It might be useful for you to bullet point the different skills and identify 2 coaches for each, and then bullet point how they are similar and how they are different for each of those skills.